Hey, welcome back. I have to use a different recording device here, so you're going to see probably different angles, and it's a lot heavier, but I'm going to try to... I've used it many times in the past, so no big deal. We are at the spot where it's the Allies' first impulse, and I do have some rules corrections that I must do, and the first one is this last battle that was here. You can see these blue guys here. We had a battle, and I drew 9 chits when I apparently was only supposed to draw 7, and sure enough, I went back and I said that 7 was the maximum, and I ended up drawing 9. Well, the good news is that the unit still would have been destroyed. That part's not bad. And then even better news for us is we only would have taken 1 hit instead of 2. So you can see this elite unit here. I'm going to repair him back up because we took the hit with this unit. Now, I did a few things right, and there was one rule mistake. That was just a mental blunder, but there was a rule mistake that I made, and thank you for someone for catching it. And this is one that I make a lot, and I'm sorry about I make this mistake a lot, and it's really bad, largely because this rule only exists on December 16th up until December 20th, and then it changes. So I remember when I was doing my first ever playthrough of this, I was struggling with this rule, never remembering to do it. And then when I finally started remembering to do it, December 20th came, and then I was supposed to stop doing it, and I kept doing it. So this rule is like a thorn in my side. But anyways, what is that rule? Let me show you real quick. There's, in this player aid here, it says key rules and summary, or the AI. If you open it up, and there's a really nice chart here that says these are checks that you need to do when it's your turn. So when you're moving in combat, these are the things you have to check for. So you may remember we approached this bridge, and that bridge was Allied at the time. And I said we don't have to do a bridge demolition check, and that's true, because look, see, it doesn't start until turn 17. However, on turn 16, roadblock checks always happen. And when a unit enters a hex next to an empty in-supply position, hex with a road. So that sounds like a mouthful, but it's not as intimidating as you might think. It definitely intimidated me, though, when I first played. First of all, let's talk about supply. Supply is, I can trace from any position. I can move 1, 2, 3, 4 hexes without having to go through any enemy zone of control. And after I move 4 hexes, I am on a road that goes to a friendly edge of the map. What does a friendly edge mean? Well, the west edge is definitely Allied. The east edge is German. This west wall that you see here that comes down, the south and north edges to the right of the west wall is German. The south edge to the left of the west wall is Allied. So as long as the Allies trace a path to the south here, they actually get supplies. So this is really hard to cut these guys off, even though last campaign I thought, I was convinced the entire time I can cut these guys off from supply. I really can't, not easily at least, because they can just go off the south edge of the map, and even if I cut them off from going west. So anyways, I'm getting a little sidetracked there. The important part here that I missed is when this unit entered this space, I correctly stated that we don't check to see if the Allies blew up this bridge. That part is true, but you can see here this is a hold position. That's what these orange circles are. This is a hold position that is supplied. You can follow the path from this road all the way to the western edge or the northern edge, it doesn't matter. And so I have to stop and check to see if they put a roadblock there. And I have to do that for every single one of these that's on a road. This guy here, I don't have to do it for, but if they're on a road, we have to check to see if they get roadblocks. Now, on December 20th, this rule changes, and I'm not going to get into that until December 20th, but But just understand that once you get the hang of this rule, then it changes on you. But right now, I have to check this. It's a simple check. What you do is you just roll a die, and if I get a 3 or less, a roadblock's going to show up. If I get a 4 or more, then nothing happens. And I got a 9. So thankfully, nothing happens, because now I don't have to go back and reverse my turn. So then this unit was allowed to move there, no problem. And so that's what I was able to do. Now, yeah, that's it. That's all. I was just wondering, was this guy involved in the combat? And I don't think he was. That now officially concludes our impulse. And like I said, we draw back up to our hand size, which is 6 for the rest of the game. And so I have these cards. We'll look at those in a bit. But let's do the allied turn. The allied turn can be very quick, or it can take a long time. It all depends on what we draw. So let's see what we get. What you do on the allied turn is you draw the command card here. And so we just draw it, and we see what it says. So here's some things to pay attention to. This card wants to do something with the 12th Corps. Okay, that's the key thing that it wants to do. And this is a what's called a division card. So only the 4th Armored and 10th Armored are affected by this card. Okay, and then these 3s here indicate that there's 3 of each in the game. They may be on the map or they may be off in the reserves, but there's only 3 of each in these divisions. So I really like this. It's very helpful when you're trying to find all your, where are they at? How many of them are there? That was a very nice touch. Okay, so what you do with the allied turn, it's a very simple thing. You just start at the top and you do the very first row that they can actually do an action for. So the first thing they want us to do is deploy the 4th and 10th Armor Division Reserves. You ignore the A's, remember, that's for the Allied solo game. So the second one will be activate those 2 divisions. And then the third thing they would do is do an event called Engineers. And remember, anything below the dotted line, this is for combat. So this is a dual functionality card. You're only concerned with what's above my hand there, okay? So the first thing we got to check is, will they deploy the 4th and 10th Armor Division Reserves? And I honestly don't know. They have reserves over there, but we got to make sure they're part of the 4th and 10th Armor. Let's go check. Okay, so when you're looking at the reserves, it starts to become second nature, but this is the 12th right here. You can see that this is the 12th. Now, these are the 4th Division, but I don't think they're 4th Armored. Okay, so there's a difference between 4th Armored and 4th Division. Let me make sure, because I think these are the 4th. I think that might be a mistake, that it says Armored. I think that's a mistake. Let me, so this solo guide that they give you is on the very last page. And I know we haven't been using it because I'm trying to teach you how to use the game without this solo guide, just using the player aids that come with the game. But this solo guide is very helpful. They have card and map errata. See that there? And so, yeah, right here, look at that. Allied Command Card 23, the 4th Armored Division should read 4th Infantry Division. So, see, that was my hang-up. I was looking for tanks, and I couldn't find any tanks. So, to whoever made this, I say, thank you. And I use that one a lot. I'm sorry. That was bad. Okay, so this should say the 4th Infantry Division. There's 3 of them. One of them is already in the game right here, and then these are the other 2. So yes, they are going to deploy. And this is card number 23. You can verify that right here. So there is an errata, and I don't know if you're willing to write on your card, but that should say 4th Infantry. Anyways, so these guys are going to deploy. Now, the way they're going to deploy is there's a couple of issues here. The first one is they deploy in the order from lowest to highest. So this number 5 is going to deploy before the number 7. That's the first thing. okay? And that happens no matter what turn or day it is. I'm pretty sure. I don't know of any exceptions. The December 16th has a special rule. And this is a rule that I forgot the first time I played. So I'm pointing it out here. And it says deploy just one reserve unit when performing the deploy reserves command. So the allies are only going to deploy this guy. This one is going to go back into the reserve pool. They're just, they're still on surprise. This was a surprise attack. They weren't ready, so only one unit is going to come out. So that's the first thing. Normally, both units would come out. Now, there is a deployment method we're going to follow. It is possible this unit won't come out at all, okay? Just got to preface with that. And if it does not come out at all, we then move on to the next action, okay? So when you're doing the allied AI, it is possible you're going to go down a rabbit hole and then have to come back out. And that's what's going on here. So when we try to deploy this guy, if we can't find a place that qualifies, then he will go back in the reserve pool, and then we're going to go and activate the 4th Division, which may or may not happen as well. And so just understand that. Okay, so off of memory, I can tell you that this guy has to go somewhere where a German unit can move to, but let's go to the player aid, and I'll try to show you how to figure this out for yourself, because this is, I think, the key to learning the game. It's probably the most intimidating, or at least it was for me, and I think some of the viewers who have watched me play the first campaign will tell you this is where they get the most anxiety, is watching me perform this step. So let's see if I've become, past a Padawan and at least become an apprentice in this. So the one you want to grab is the Allied System Intelligence, and then you want to open it up, and these 2 green charts here are what you want. Now, the key thing to understand, I'm just looking for my pen here, is that on day 16 and 17, only method A is used. That's this left box. We don't use the right box at all until December 18th. And I know I actually complained a lot about this when I first encountered this. I was like, oh my God, there's even 2 methods. It's really not as bad as you think once you get the hang of it. Getting the hang of it, there is a learning curve, but it's really not that bad once you get the hang of it. Now, I'm not saying I do these perfectly. There are times when I will deploy a reserve unit and it will be in a good spot, but not the most perfect spot. And so some folks might write in and tell me, hey, yeah, that was a decent spot, but you missed this other one. And so that does happen. And all I can say to you is don't get discouraged. It does get easier, especially when you see some examples. So, okay, so we're going to ignore this, and then we're going to follow method A. Okay, there's a big giant checklist that you have to do. First, it has to go somewhere that's empty, okay? And it has to be in a position hex, okay? What does position hex mean? A position hex are these orange numbers, okay? Those are position hexes. This with the number 1 is not a position hex. Even though that number 1 means something, that's not a position. Only the orange circles are positions. So they don't want to go to these places that don't have orange circles, okay? That's the first thing. They can only go where there's an orange circle. All right. So now that you understand that, it has to be an empty one. So they can't go here where the other 4th Division unit is. It has to go to one of these other ones, okay? So next, it has to be in the core area. Okay. You already know the answer to this, even if you don't realize it, because I talked about it with the Germans, how they have these bands here and these little squiggly lines. Well, the Allies have the same thing. They're just hidden behind my cup here. So we're doing the 12th Corps, and you can see the 12th Corps is this little green band right here. So that means the 12th Corps can only deploy underneath this line, okay? Now, there's a difference between the Germans and the Allies here. The Germans have to stay within their band until a certain day. I think it's December 20th or something like that. I don't know the exact day, but the point is that they can never move, like these gray units can't move down south here into this, because this is their boundary line, all right? The Allies don't have boundary lines other than when you're doing this deployment step. Once they're deployed on the map, they can move wherever they want, okay? So that's just something to remember and understand. There's a difference between the Germans and the Allies for at least the first couple days. Eventually, the Germans don't have to worry about it either. But always, always, always for deployment on both sides, you have to pay attention to your squiggly lines. Okay, so what we learned then is that this guy has to be on one of these empty spots, and it has to be south of this squiggly line. Okay, that's where we're at so far. So what's next? Able to trace Allied supply. Okay, I can tell you with certainty that the entire front can trace Allied supply. There's no German units back here disrupting supply. So from here all the way down to here, now remember, we can only do empty positions. I can just go ding, 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 ding. All of these, including this one, okay, can trace supply. All right, so we're still good. Next one, and this is a critical one. Unit proximity. The German unit is proximate. Okay, what does that mean? Well, the proximate or not proximate, there's a couple of things. The first one is this solo booklet has a really nice page that defines all of those. It actually defines communication, supply, supply head, the map edges, and then if we go a little further, those are the combat chits. Here we go. I bet it's here, right there. Proximate to a hex and proximate to a unit. A unit is able to reach and enter the hex in a single legal move. Okay. Now these are all in the rulebook as well, but to be quite honest, this player aid is where it shines. It saves us from having to go look it up. Maybe somewhere on these player aids that came with the game it defines what proximate is, but I don't think it does. It just says the word proximate and then probably references the rule book, and then you have to dig into there. So a German unit has to be able to move there in a legal move. So remember we talked about this. This German unit could move here. That's a fair move, but because he's crossing a river, that uses up all of his movement points. Okay? Then let's say he was here and he still had more movement points, which is not possible, but let's say he did. He is not allowed to move to here. Do you remember why? Because he's in zone of control and you can't move from one zone of control to another zone of control. The only thing he can do is move out of the zone of control. That's the only option available to him. Okay? So even if he somehow miraculously got here, he couldn't go to there. So none of these units can reach these hex positions that are back here. It's impossible. Okay? Now, this one is a very strong candidate. However, let's think it through. Can a German unit get here? And the answer is no. Even though this German unit's here and he's got 3 movement points, you might be thinking, okay, well, that's just 1, 2. There's 2 reasons why this German unit can't get there. The first one is he's in a zone of control, and moving here would be in another zone of control. That's the first issue. The second one is covered up. The bridge is blown. So moving across this bridge requires him to use all of his movement points. This is not a candidate. This one looks close, right? But it's above the squiggly line. Aha, see, that was a trick question. But actually, he can't move there anyways. So there's 2 reasons. And this one, no one can move to. So right now, we have no units that can move proximate. Okay? So there are no hold positions that are empty. Remember, the key word was empty, and below the squiggly line, there's not a single place that he can deploy to. I hope that makes sense. So unfortunately, this unit is not going to deploy this turn. And it's very specific. You have to have a first and then an and. So both of these conditions have, these set of conditions and this condition, it has to both be true. Then after that, you check other things, and we'll get into that whenever we actually do a deployment. But this deployment is not happening. Now, just to give you a sneak peek, deployment method B would have deployed. Okay, so this method B over here does not require a German proximate. And it just requires that the Germans are within a certain number of hexes. So it would have deployed, and in fact, it would have deployed exactly right there. So when deployment method B eventually comes into the game, that guy would have come out. But I know we're not there yet, so don't worry about it. But just for your own mental edification, just understand that deployment method B was a no-brainer. He was going to go right here. And I'll explain why when we get there. Okay, so what else is he going to do? Well, the next thing he wants to do is... Oh, I'm sorry. I need to take a quick break. I will be back. I'm sorry to leave you in suspense, but I promise I will be back in just 1 minute, and we will do the next step on this. Thanks for watching. Stay awesome.